read the interesting story this week of a terrifically wealthy oil magnate who had an unusual clause in his will. He had specified that when he died, he should be buried in his own Rolls Royce. And not only that, but he should be buried sitting upright behind the wheel of his own Rolls Royce. And so, when he died, he was. That's how they buried him. And they had to use JCB diggers to create the oversized hole for the man and his car. And a special crane lowered this unique coffin down into the hole. And as it went down, the crane operator was heard to say, looking at this man, this corpse in the car, overheard to say, "Well, that's really living." Well, of course, the irony is that's actually really dying, isn't it? It just goes to show, I think, that it's so easy for many people today to make the mistake of thinking that life basically consists in the things that you have, what you're able to buy for yourself. Even during the very act of lowering a corpse into the ground, somebody is still thinking, that's living, because he's behind the wheel of a Rolls Royce to the very end, living to the full, when of course it's not, is it? The thing is, it's not just a rich man or a crane operator who can make that mistake. It's me and it's you. You can make that mistake this very week. You don't have to have a lot of money to make the mistake of thinking that life consists in the things that we have. It can be just as much the problem or mistake of somebody who has very little money as it is somebody who has plenty. Jesus says that if it bothers you that someone else has all the money they need, but you never seem to, then actually you could well be the one who's guilty of the greed that you find so easy to criticise. He says that if you care so much about maintaining the same standard of living as your non-Christian colleagues or neighbours or friends, then you potentially have a life-threatening money problem, because you want to live to the same level as everyone else, and you find it possible to live to the same level as everyone else because you're not giving enough away. If you are giving financially to the work of the gospel only once all your other spending is accounted for, then your heart is potentially in, again, the same dangerous place as this so-called rich fool, because your priorities are probably turned on their head, the wrong way around. Jesus says in Luke chapter 12 that even if you're simply worrying about money right now, it could well be you who thinks that life consists in how much stuff you have, because you're just worrying about it instead of trusting in the God who will provide. And he also says that you might not even realise that this is what's going on in your heart. We can be easily fooled into missing this. It might be lurking there, disguised as something else, putting you in grave danger, blinding you to eternal realities that you cannot afford to miss. Why do I say that? Well, because exactly that happened to this real life person here in Luke chapter 12 and verse 13. So it can happen to you. So what does Jesus say to this man? And what does he say therefore to me and to you? Well, he says, it seems to me, three things. And the first is this: guard your heart. Guard your heart. To avoid falling into this trap, guard your heart. So this man I'm referring to is the figure in verse 13 of chapter 12 of Luke's Gospel, where it says, someone in the crowd said to him, breaks into the middle of his teaching that we've been covering since chapter 12, the beginning of the chapter, someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." We don't know anything about the background to this. We don't know anything about this guy's story. We don't know whether he was in the right or in the wrong. We don't know whether his claim was justified. We don't know if his brother was being mean or he was simply carrying out the clauses of a will. We have no idea about the kind of backstory. All we know from this is that this man already believes he knows what Jesus should do, and he's going to tell him. "Teacher, tell this man, my brother, to divide the inheritance with me." Okay, he doesn't tell Jesus, well, this is the reason for it and the other. He says, I've already decided that this, what he's doing is wrong, and I'm going to tell you about it. And I want you to force him by your authority to give me what I think is due to me. Now, like I say, we don't know exactly what the story is here, but I think probably if you at any time find yourself dictating to the Lord of the universe what he ought or not to do, you are almost certainly going wrong somewhere. Tell him to do this. That's not how you speak to the Lord Jesus Christ. And I think Jesus makes that clear in his response in verse 14 when he replies to him, not friend, not dear one, but man. Man doesn't call many people man in the Gospels. And I think because of that, we can be pretty sure that Jesus sees this person as a stranger. Not simply he's never met him before, but a stranger to his ways of grace, and of his being his disciple. He is not on Jesus' side. He is trying to get Jesus on his side, but Jesus clearly does not feel he easily associates with him or sees life in the same way. Because Jesus won't just automatically decide with our pre-decided, he won't side with our pre-decided judgment of what is right and what is wrong. Just because we reckon he should, or because we tell him to boldly enough or shout loudly enough, tell him to divide the inheritance with me, doesn't get Jesus on your side, because Jesus knows what's best. Jesus knows what is right already. He makes that decision. And in this demand of the man, I think Jesus then comes to see the true nature of his heart. And he'll always see your heart too, whatever you're asking of him. He'll know whether you're right or wrong in the way you're asking or the reason you're asking for it. And so he says, man, verse 14, who appointed me a judge or an arbiter between you? It's not my place to divide people. I came to reconcile. And you're asking me to arbitrate when actually I'm the one who will ultimately decide these things. So don't ask me to step in and take your side because you are sure that you're in the right. And then Jesus takes the opportunity to warn everybody. Verse 15, he said to them. So now he doesn't just talk to the man, but he approaches the whole crowd and particularly his disciples, and he says, watch out, be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions. So Jesus has perceived, but behind the man's request is something that we might not immediately see. There's greed in his heart. And so Jesus is saying, guard your heart. Watch out. You haven't even realised what your real problem is, man. This man thought he was coming to Jesus to get him to sort out an injustice. He thought he was being unfairly treated. That's my big problem. And Jesus turns around and says to him, you've got a much bigger problem than that. That's not your real problem. Your real problem, friend, is that there's greed under the surface in your heart, wanting more and more and more. And it's lurking under what can present itself as a right concern for justice. A legitimate concern, it seems to you, but I'm telling you that there's something more problematic going on under the surface, says Jesus. Now, of course, it's not that we should never be concerned about justice and about right treatment and about fairness in the world. He isn't saying that. He's just saying that we ought to be especially wary of what our hearts are really doing where hard cash is involved. Because it's a snare. The love of money. is the root of all kinds of evil. We need to be aware of that. It's not that having money is bad in itself. It's not wrong to be wealthy, far from it. But it can be a snare, it can create difficulties in our hearts if we're not careful. So guard your heart, Jesus says. Because greed, wanting more and more and more, says something about how you really think life works. If really in your heart, it doesn't matter kind of what you say or what you profess, if in your heart what you really feel is that you need to be financially buoyant if life is going to turn out okay, then Jesus says your heart is ill. There's something wrong with you. If you think, actually, I know God will work out everything really, but I just need to make sure there's still enough money just to be on the safe side. He says, don't be tricked into thinking that your security can come from having an abundance of possessions. Life is not found there. Verse 15, be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions. You don't find life there. So watch out for any attitude of your heart that slips into thinking that it does come from there. Last month, a man called Joe Thwaite from Gloucester woke up one morning and he found an email on his phone. And this email was from the National Lottery, which he'd played the week before. And the email said, "Good news, you've won a prize." And Joe Thwaite and his wife Jess had in fact won £184 million. And Jesus says, that doesn't get them a fraction closer to life. Not a fraction. It will change many things for them, I am sure. But having £184 million has nothing to do with the only life worth having. You could use that amount of money to do great good towards the only life worth having, or you could let it blind you to the only life worth having, but in itself it adds nothing at all to life. Because life, Jesus says, doesn't consist in the abundance of your possessions. So whether you have $1 trillion or you have nothing, that's not the concern. And I'm asking, do you really believe that? Do I really believe that? Because it's hard sometimes to believe that in practice. Because it's easy to think, yes, okay, I know what the Bible teaches, that's fine. But at least they can pay off their mortgage now. And at least now they're secure against the cost of living crisis. They won't have any problem with that. And they can go on holiday wherever they want, and that would be nice for them. And they can easily send their kids to the university, and so on and so on. But Jesus wants it to click with you and to click with me that none of that is actually life, not as he defines it. That's not life. That's something else. That's the stuff of this world. And there's something to be said for that. There's nothing wrong with going on holiday or university or whatever. But that's not life that Jesus came to bring. Eternal life isn't found in the abundance of your possessions. Knowing him is life. Whether you live in a bedsit or a hovel or a penthouse, knowing Jesus is life. Trusting him through thick and thin, that's life. Having Jesus when everything else is collapsing, that's life. Giving away your stuff to others for their good, like he did, is life. Losing your life to find it, that is life. So guard your heart, because it's easy to slip into thinking that something else is life. That abundance of possessions is life. And I can think like that, and you can think like that. But it's not true. Life is found in Jesus Christ. And when we have things in this life, we can use those to glorify him. But in themselves, they don't give us the life which only he can give. So, guard your heart. Watch out for that, he says. Something might be lurking under other things that you've not noticed. Guard your heart. Number 2, remember the giver. Remember the giver. This, I think, is the lesson of this famous parable then that Jesus now goes on to tell, to really drive this lesson home. Verse 16, he told them this parable. The ground of a certain rich man yielded an abundant harvest, and he thought to himself, what shall I do? I have no place to store my crops. This is phrased very deliberately to demonstrate that the surplus the man in the parable found himself with was not of his own doing. Do you see what it says? It doesn't say a rich man gained for himself more wealth, more grain. It doesn't say that. It says the ground of a certain rich man yielded an abundant harvest. That's kind of a Bible way of saying God blessed him. God made stuff grow. It just doesn't mention God, but under the surface it said it just happened. It came out of the ground. It had nothing to do with him. It was a gift from the giver. Now, he may well have been a good farmer. He may well have been a good businessman. Jesus makes no comment about that specifically. But even so, in this instance, all his prosperity comes from a source other than himself. He's received a gift, but he doesn't acknowledge it. And just as we got a glimpse into the man in the crowd's heart a few verses ago, now we get a glimpse into the heart of the man in the parable. Because we're given access by Jesus to his inward musings. Verse 17, he thought to himself, what shall I do? I have no place to store my crops. That's not a particularly poor question. Okay, if you get plenty of crops, that's quite legitimate to say, what am I going to do about it? The question's fine. It's the answer that's the problem. His answer is a shocker from a biblical point of view. Entirely missing in his answer is any reference whatsoever to the giver of his prosperity or to those to whom he might give something from his prosperity. No mention of God and no mention of others. The whole inward dialogue is between him and himself. It's all about him. See it? Verse 17, what shall I do? I have no place to store my crops. Verse 18, this is what I'll do. I will tear down my barns and build bigger ones, and there I will store my surplus. And I'll say to myself, you've plenty of grain for many years. You see, it's all about him. It's like, how am I going to secure myself for years to come? How am I going to make my life easier? How am I going to enjoy my retirement? It's all about me. And God doesn't get a look in, and other people don't get a look in. He's forgetting the giver, and he's forgetting to be a giver. It never seems to occur to him, have you thought about this? It never seems to occur to him that he is already rich. The ground of a certain rich man yielded an abundant harvest. Okay, so he doesn't actually need more. He's already got plenty, and then God gives him something on top of it, and he says, what are you going to do with it? It's almost like a test. It's a challenge to say, okay, I'm going to give you stuff. Now, what's your response? He has missed the fact he doesn't need anything more for himself, and God might just be giving it to him that he might bless others, or might give praise to him, to God. But he's forgotten the giver. And whether the man kind of in this imaginary world, this parable world, whether he believed in God or not, confessionally, he has now become a hardcore atheist in practice. He doesn't believe in God really at all in practice. And actually, it's not just him, so do I, and so do you, every time you forget the giver. You become an atheist when you check your bank balance rather than your Bible to reassure yourself that everything's going to be okay. There's only one place where you know for sure everything's going to be okay, and it's not your bank balance. It's your Bible. You're an atheist. You're an atheist. You don't believe in God if you say, I'm going to put my trust there rather than him. I'm going to make sure I've got enough stored up for that, for then, for my retirement, for next week, for whenever. If you're trusting in that, then you're not really functionally believing in the giver. You're trusting yourself. You're trusting your things, your money. Or you might become an atheist in a different way. You might become an atheist when you find some unexpected money coming your way. I didn't know this was happening here. Someone's giving me a gift. Someone's giving me that. A relative has died. It's come my way. And the first thing you think is, what am I going to get for myself or my family with this extra money? rather than, who can I bless with this money? How can I prosper Christ's kingdom with this money at home or abroad? That should be the first thought. If it's not your first thought, then in practice you're an atheist. You don't believe that God gave it to you, that he deserves money back, if you like, some investment in his kingdom, or investment in others who bear his image. But if it's just about you, then you're the little king in your little kingdom, or your little queen in your kingdom, and you're saying, well, what's most important really is that I make sure I'm provided for, rather than thinking like Christ, happy to lose my life, I might save it, and even might lead to the saving of others too. Famous example of this, I think, is practically helpful. It maybe needs to be sort of contextualised for our own day, but the example of John Wesley, the famous Methodist evangelist, I believe he came to this part of the world, even to Halifax at some point, would that be right, I think? Lived in the 18th century, and at the beginning of his ministry, he wasn't well known and he earned very little money, just about enough to survive on. In 1731, he recorded that his income was £30 for the year. Obviously, there's been inflation since then. £30 for the year. His living expenses were £28 for the year, and so he gave away the remaining £2 that he had left. The next year, 1732, he was getting a little bit more known, and perhaps he'd written a book or two, and his income from that then doubled in the next year. But he still lived on £28. And now he could give £32 away rather than £2. Well, within the next couple of years, in 1734, his income had risen to £120, 4 times what it was 4 years ago. And again, he lived on the same amount. He lived on £28, which left him £98 to give away to the poor, which is what he did. He kept his standard of living the same throughout his life, and by the end of his ministry, he was earning in excess of £1,400 a year, which was a pretty colossal amount for that time in history. And still, earning that amount, he gave away all but £30, because he decided, I can live on £30, that's what I need to survive. Of course, everyone needs money to survive, but he lived on that simply and gave the rest away. Now, as I say, real life today might not look exactly like that. There might be qualifiers to make and so on. But I think Wesley still got it basically right. I think the principle is a good one. He didn't say, right, God's given me more now. That means I can have a higher standard of living for me. He said, no, God's given me more. What does he want me to do with it? He felt the need to remember the giver, not to forget him. He asked himself, what can I do for God and God's world with the money that's been entrusted to him? And of course, we've all got different amounts of money, but that's the same question that can be asked by all of us of our own lives, how we use our money. There will be complexities, there will be differences in situations. Some of you are married to unbelievers, and their household money maybe is a different situation there, and other kinds of factors which will come in. But you see the principle? Remember the giver of what you have. That's principle number 2. Remember the giver. So we've seen guard your heart, remember the giver, finally, prepare for eternity. Prepare for eternity. That's the best thing you can do, whether you have money a lot or a little. The rich man in the story, you see, thought he could secure his future with his stuff. Verse 19, I'll say to myself, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry. He thought he had plenty of grain, and in fact, if everything had happened as he thought it was going to happen, he would have plenty of grain. But he forgot to factor in one massive thing: his own mortality. He was not preparing for eternity. Verse 20, but God said to him, you fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? Now, in the Bible, a fool is not necessarily someone who's stupid, it's someone who is godless. It's someone who doesn't factor in that they have an eternal soul which one day will stand before God and must give account of themselves for everything they've done and how they've lived, and what they've done with the gifts God has given them. And then God then, who he has left out of all his planning, now steps onto the stage in his life and addresses him directly. You fool! What were you thinking? Did you really think that your life would just carry on indefinitely? You left me out, now I'm coming in, and you're going to have to wake up suddenly to reality. This man has a bigger problem than his bulging barns. He has the problem of the day of his death, and it's rushed up a lot more quickly than he thought it would, as it does for many today. He had confused temporary realities with eternal ones. He had thought that what lasts is what he has now, when actually what lasts is what will come to us after we have died, and when God makes a new creation, and that's what matters. He had what one person calls eternity amnesia. Do you have eternity amnesia? You forget that this life is not all there is, that there's another life, that there's treasure to be stored up in heaven where moth and rust can't destroy and where thieves don't break in and steal, but instead we spend our time just making for ourselves stuff which will just perish, be lost, be stolen and be broken. His eternity amnesia gave him a false sense of being in control of everything and saying, I know how this is going to pan out, when actually there's a God who's in charge, not him. He wasn't in control, you aren't in control. And Joe and Jess Thwaite, remember them? 184 million? They're not in control either. I was very struck reading a newspaper report of their win. Very struck by one comment that the wife, Jess, made very soon after getting that amount of money. This is what she said. She literally said this. This gives us time to dream about that which we haven't had before. This gives us time to dream, which we haven't had before. How does she know that? How does she know that she's now suddenly got more time because she's got £184 million? Where's the connection? Where's the logic? It gives us time to dream. You don't know whether you have time to dream or whether when you're dreaming tonight your life will be demanded of you. Who knows? You don't know, I don't know. I might not see you next Sunday, I might be with the Lord. You might be with the Lord. Who knows? We must prepare for eternity. When the American oil baron, I've got a lot of oil barons all over people tonight, when the American oil baron John D. Rockefeller, some of you might have heard of him, very famous in the late 19th century and early 20th century, he died having earned an absolutely vast fortune during his life. As I understand it, he did put it to good use in many ways as something of a philanthropist. But when he died, his accountant was asked how much he had left behind. And the answer came back in one word: everything. Everything. Of course. You cannot take any of it with you. You think you can sit in your Rolls Royce in a coffin, you haven't taken it with you. Those who fail to prepare them for eternity with the gifts God has given them in this life will find themselves under the same sentence as the man in the parable, verse 21. This is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves but is not rich towards God. Are you rich towards God with what you have? It's going to look a bit different for each of us in our different circumstances, but the principle is prepare for eternity by being rich towards God now, rather than storing up treasure for yourself. This man not only failed to feast in this life as he had planned, to eat, drink and be merry, he failed to find a place at the table that really matters. The wedding supper of the Lamb. You do not want to miss that. It doesn't matter if you miss feasting in this life. That really doesn't matter. You could live on bread and water for the rest of this life if you needed to, but you cannot live without finding a place at that table when Christ comes again. You will be miserable beyond your wildest imagination if you do not reach there. If you have wasted every opportunity now to call on the name of the Lord and be saved and live for him with what he's given you. You want to be there. You want not to miss out on that feast. I hope so. So, how do we avoid these same mistakes that this man made? Well, strangely, the way to avoid these mistakes is actually to remember how rich you are already. In Christ, you're rich. There was a missionary, I read the story of Paul Tripp, tells the story of this missionary who was ministering in a very impoverished country, and the people around him had literally nothing. And one time this missionary was walking to the market to get provisions for himself, and he happened across a pack of little boys who were dressed in rags. His heart went out to the boys. They had little hope. They had a dark future ahead of them. He reached into his pocket. He gave a boy who seemed to be the leader of the pack a $10 bill. That was riches that this boy had never seen in his life before. And the missionary said, use it wisely, and went on his way. Well, the missionary went to get what he needed in the market, and he came back again, walked home, and he heard the sounds of happy chatter as he saw this little pack of boys once more. And to his shock and surprise, each one of the boys had an ice cream in his hand. An ice cream. And he could not believe what he was seeing. He thought they could have used that so much better than having an ice cream just for today. And he took the leader of the pack aside and he said, look, what are you doing? I gave you more money than you've ever seen. And this is what you do with it? And with little hesitation, the boy said to him, sir, yesterday we were poor. Tomorrow we'll be poor. But today we have ice cream. And that's the perspective of someone who doesn't realise the riches they have and what they can do with it. But if you're a Christian, yesterday you were rich, and tomorrow you'll be rich. And today then you can live with what God's given you, because you can't actually lose ultimately what's most important. He's given you everything you'd ever need or want. So live wisely with what you have. You do not need to hold on to earthly things to guarantee a wonderful future. Christ has already guaranteed that for you. By dying and rising for you. You can afford now literally you can afford to live simply and fruitfully for God and for others. Remember what we read right at the start of the service? You who have no money, come buy and eat. Come find the richest of fare, the water that satisfies. If you have nothing, you still have Him. And therefore, you have everything. So let's live like it. Let's pray together. Help us, Father, to prepare for eternity. Help us to live in a way that uses our money wisely for you. Remembers that in Christ we are truly rich. Help us not to forget you as the giver of all good things. And help us to guard our hearts from all kinds of greed. Father, thank you that life doesn't consist in the abundance of our possessions. Thank you that it consists in knowing you through your Son. Forgive us where we've got this wrong. Help us to change, maybe in very practical ways, if we need to. Help us to trust you with our future, rather than ever trusting ourselves or what we have. For Jesus' sake we pray. Amen. Amen.